Welcome to the Trauma Therapist Podcast. My name is Guy McPherson. I interview incredible people who've dedicated their lives to helping those who've been impacted by trauma. A big thank you to our sponsors and our guests who are supporting this show. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Our folks, welcome back to the podcast. Very excited to have us make us today, Sharon Kwon. Sharon, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. Sharon is the co-founder of Joyous PBC and the founder of Bodhi Aware Therapy, where she works as a psychotherapist specializing in immigrant and BIPOC individuals, couples, and families. Cognitive psychologist, she develops accessible, innovative mental health solutions while maintaining a grounded clinical practice focused on identity, cultural assimilation, spirituality, religious trauma, and relational dynamics. Her work also centers on helping clients build boundaries, communicate effectively, and live more authentically. All right, Sharon, just a little bit about you. Before we get going, share with our listeners where you're from originally and where you are currently.
I was originally born in South Korea, and right now I am based in Los Angeles, where I grew up.
Okay. All right, so let's get into this. How the heck does this all start for you?
So it all started for me, I went to therapy finally, and it really changed my life. I think I grew up just feeling very different from my peers, and my friends, they're amazing. They've always been like, you should really try therapy. I think it would be really helpful for you. But I always thought that it was for like rich white people. I didn't think that it could be for me. I didn't think that anybody would really understand the cultural context of my trauma. But I finally got to a point where it was like rock bottom and I needed help. I think I was around 25 and I sought a Korean American therapist and immediately just felt so seen. She was such a kindred spirit. She really understood just all the religious trauma that I grew up with. Koreans, like there's 2 million Korean Americans in America, and a lot of them, the biggest population of Koreans outside of Korea is in LA, and 60% of Korean Americans identify as Christian. And so I grew up in this tiny, like it felt like a Christian Korean bubble. It almost felt like just like being raised in a cult. And my father is a pastor, and so there was a lot of layers of just enmeshment and wanting to please and having a hard time just being myself. And so this therapist, she got it right away. And right from that moment on, I stopped wanting to run away and hide myself, and it became all about becoming the most authentic version of myself and really living life the way that I wanted, which I just never thought was possible.
All right. You jumped over a whole portion of your life. What the hell was going on?
Like growing up?
Yeah. I mean, you said a couple of things that really stood out to me. You felt different. Mm-hmm. You felt you couldn't be yourself. Mm-hmm. All this stuff going on with the enmeshment. What was it and how was it impacting you specifically?
Yeah, so being the daughter of a pastor is always just a lot of pressure to be a certain way. It felt like I was sharing my life with church. I was sharing my life with God. And for my parents, that was their biggest purpose in life. It was God was number one, and then me. It was never like me first. And so all of everything just became about Sundays. Like how can we all show up for Sunday? And church was it was an everyday thing. It was just such a daily part of my life. And, when I was little, I would follow. I believed because, kids, that's what they do. They believe what their parents want them to believe. But as I got older, I started finding myself drifting away. I started wanting to get out of the tiny bubble that they wanted to keep me in. And that brought up a lot of shame and a lot of hiding myself. Like, I really feel like I had to I grew up in the closet a little bit of not really being able to be my authentic self and really having to compartmentalize.
All right. So you've mentioned several times your authentic self. What was it that you couldn't be or who you couldn't be?
I couldn't be myself. I had to be a representative of God. I had to be a representative of my parents. And that was dressing a certain way, acting a certain way, believing certain beliefs. Yeah, I really felt like I had no freedom to be curious and make mistakes and do the things that normal kids were doing. Like as a kid, I couldn't even dress up for Halloween. I wasn't allowed to go trick or treating until I was old enough to go by myself. There were a lot of restrictions, a lot of surveillance, and just a lot of what felt like it really just being in a cult.
So, as you're growing up, how is this impacting you? Symptomatically, what's going on, if anything?
A lot of anxiety, a lot of hypervigilance, walking on eggshells, hiding myself. I really felt like I had so many different identities. I couldn't be who I really wanted to be around them. I had to hide all of these parts of me. I had to hide relationships. They were very strict about, boys. I couldn't like have any boyfriends, like literally just friends who were boys. There were so many normal parts of life that I feel like had to be so hidden, and it turned into me really, I got really good at lying, so much so that I feel like I was just constantly lying to myself. And it really just created a world that, and a sense of self and identity that I didn't want. I wanted to just be able to be open and free, but yeah, I always had this like heightened anxiety because there was always going to be something to hide.
So, how do things unfold as you're growing up, getting into school?
School became a big source of, it was a big outlet for me because I knew that was one way that I could earn my freedom. That was something that was parent approved. Koreans really stress education and academics. And so I was like, well, I can't be that Christian daughter for them, which, I kept a secret the whole time. I was acting like I believed, going to church, going through all the motions. But I knew like deep down that was not something that was in my heart. Like, that was something that I was faking for them. But with education, I knew that that was something that they could be proud of, that I could also get along with. And so I really poured my all into it. I was like very much a high achiever, very much just wanting to get into the best and furthest school from them so that I could finally be free. And that's what I did. So I ended up going to school in Chicago. I was like, I have to put at least a plane distance between us. And that's when I really feel like my life started.
Wow. Okay. So, what happened?
I got to be who I am. I got to be free. I got to dress how I want. I got to be who I want. It was so cathartic and such a release to not have to be so hyper vigilant and walking on eggshells all the time and kind of like living life with, looking behind my shoulder. It was truly just so life-changing, and like I said, just the start of a new me, a really amazing chapter.
Was it impacting your physical health?
I mean, I think in terms of like the anxiety, yeah, like panic attacks for sure. A lot of just every mistake was such a big one, and it's like I can't get anything less than an A. It was very, very stressful in that respect.
It sounds very stressful. So you get to Chicago, your life changes, you can be yourself. At what point did you see that therapist who was just like, sounds amazing?
Honestly, it was after college. It was when I was around 25. It took a while because even then, I think I was still kind of just avoiding, it was like, this is a new chapter. I'm away from them. I can just be myself. I can do all the things that I wanted to do that I couldn't. So it was a lot of just being. I think I got a lot of healing out of that. But then I got into a really bad car accident. A taxi ran a red light and hit another taxi that ran into me and sent me through the liquor store behind me. It was very bad. And I was in the ICU for a couple of weeks. I had to get surgery under my eye.
Whoa. Was this in Chicago?
Yes, it was in Chicago.
Wow.
And it's interesting because, yes, that is the most traumatic, clearly the most traumatic event in my life when I think back of all the things that have happened. But I feel like the complex trauma that I endured living with my parents was so much worse. Like if I compared the two, I would much rather get hit by a car than like have to relive the first 18 years of my life. Like it's interesting
Yeah,
how
I mean,
trauma
we're
does that.
talking about like psychological, emotional, some might say abuse.
Yeah.
I mean, it feels very restrictive and oppressive.
Yes.
At what point did you seek help?
So I ended up going back to Korea actually and reconnected with my family there. And that was the first time I was really able to experience being a Korean without the religious piece. Because Korea is actually kind of the opposite. It's more like 60% of people over there are non religious compared to in America where 60% are.
Hmm.
And my family there, they're not Christian, and so I got to re-examine this cultural lens, like without a Christian lens, and that was really life-changing for me. And now I love being Korean. I didn't before. I used to hate it. I used to feel like all Koreans are Christian and they're gonna evangelize me and judge me. But I've come a long way with that. And so after I lived with them for a bit, I came back to the States because I got a big settlement from that taxi cab and I wanted to buy a house. And I was staying with my parents while I was looking for a place, and things just really escalated. I think at that point, it was just really hard to keep up with all the compartmentalization and the separate identities because there was such a big part of me that just was like, oh, I just want to be able to be myself. Like, I don't want to have to
Hmm.
hide this anymore. Like, I hate that I have to hide my tattoos around them. You know, I was wearing sweaters around them in California. I hate that on Sundays I have to like go to church and pretend that I believe in this. And we got into a lot of fights, and I did, and yeah, so we got into a few fights, and I got to a point where because with my dad, it's always just been a very difficult relationship. You know, he's the pastor, and this is the way, and you know, in a very patriarchal culture, you're supposed to just respect him, and but I always had a hard time with that, and yeah, we got into a really big fight that finally caused me to seek therapy and reach out to a Korean American therapist. And kind of right away, that first consult, we talked, I cried, and she was just like, just come to my office, let's talk. And yeah, the rest is history. I never looked back since then.
Now, what were you doing for work during that time?
I was not living my best life, honestly. I was waiting around for my settlement money, and I was managing social media. It was a job that I found in New York. It was remote, and so it allowed me to travel, and that's how I got to go to Korea and travel around Southeast Asia and do a bunch of remote work that way.
You said you were not living your best life.
No, no. I mean, I guess I could argue that I kind of was.
Okay.
But I wasn't living I think, up to my best potential. Like, I wasn't self actualizing at that point.
Okay. So how do things unfold such that you do start to live your best life? You do say, I want to get into what? Psychology, you become a therapist. How does that happen for you?
So, yeah, I feel like up until then, my life was all about running away from my parents, running away from this just bubble that they kept wanting to keep me in. And you know, when I first tried therapy, I loved it. And I was like, oh, I feel like I can do this. Because people have been telling me their problems my entire life and, you know, unsolicited. And so I was like, oh, wow, there's like a way to make a living off of this. This is crazy. And so I started looking into programs, and I found this like cultural psychology program in Amsterdam, and I told my therapist my plan. I was like, okay, I'm gonna do this program. I'm gonna buy an apartment here. I'm gonna rent it out. I'm gonna go to Amsterdam, and then I'm going to come back, but I'm not going to tell my parents. I'm going to pretend that I'm still living abroad and just come back secretly and like start my life here without them knowing. Because it just still felt so unimaginable being able to like live in LA right next to them and not go to church. And she kind of right away was like, so you say you want to work with Asian Americans, but you want to do this program in Amsterdam. I don't know how the credits are going to transfer. Like, it doesn't really make that much sense. Like, what is your rationale around this? And I was just like, ugh, you're right, it doesn't. Like, here I am just like doing all these mental gymnastics and physical gymnastics to avoid this problem that I just can't seem to figure out how to address, and like can't seem to figure out like a happy answer for both of us. But it really bothered me to be confronted with, wow, I'm just making my life so much harder because of this. And so having been confronted with that, I was like, ugh, you know what? You're right. I'm going to take the harder route now so that my life can be easier later. And she finally helped me like essentially come out to my parents and tell them, I'm not a Christian, I don't go to church anymore. And so that I could just honestly and authentically be here and like fully commit to just being here and go to grad school here in LA and become a therapist here. And my dad, he was not happy about it. He's still not happy about it. And my mom either, but my mom actually did show me some of, God's grace. She told me that she would still love me anyway and that it was okay. And that really set me free.
Wow, hang on a second, Sharon. That sounds amazing. I mean, I can't imagine you're painting this picture of again just such oppression, right, and restriction, and this inability to just be yourself. And
Yes.
here you are, finally, able to, like you said, come out to your parents. How did you muster up the courage to do that?
It was really hard.
How did
Probably-
you do that? How
Yeah.
did you do? Was that in person, over the phone?
It was in person. It was one of the hardest things that I've ever had to do. And I don't even know if I like did it in person. I don't even know if I did it with my dad. Like, I feel like for so long I've kind of communicated with him through my mom because she is definitely the less intense one. And so I remember just with my mom, that conversation, I cried because she's also the breadwinner of our family and she's worked her entire life. She's a nurse. She works very hard. And so I think I felt so much guilt about letting her down because this was the one thing she wanted from me. She didn't ask for anything else, just one, which was my spiritual freedom, which is kind of a lot. But, for her, it was just like this one thing. And I told her this. I was like, I feel so guilty about this. And she was like, that's something that only God can solve for you. And I was like, no, I don't feel guilty towards God. Like, I feel guilty towards you. I feel so bad for letting you down that like I can't do this for you. And something in her just like opened. I don't know. I think that really hit home for her, but she was just like, you know what? Don't worry. Like, if it's about me, like, you don't have to feel guilty. Like, you don't have to go. It's okay. I'll love you anyway. And yeah, that was just such a beautiful moment. My mom and I, she was always working. We didn't really spend that much time together. And I think just affection with Asian parents they don't really say it explicitly. They show it more so in their actions and, in providing and caring for you. And so to actually have that in words, like, it's okay, I'll still love you anyway. It was really big for me. And I think it really just gave me permission to just be myself and be okay with it.
That's amazing. I can feel the relief in the room. Really? All right. So you start studying in LA to become a therapist? Okay.
Yes.
And when you get into your program, what are you thinking? If any, are you thinking about a particular specialty or what you want to work on or who you want to work with?
Yeah, I mean, I really want to work. I really wanted to work with Asian Americans. You know, there's so many in Los Angeles that struggle with these cultural dynamics with parents. You know, oftentimes they come from very collective cultures where family is first. There's a lot of filial piety. There's a lot of guilt and shame if you don't do what the family wants. And so I really wanted to help people kind of figure out a life that works with them where they can balance these different ideals, cultural and individualistic. And then I also really wanted to work with specifically folks who have experienced religious trauma.
All right. So let me just remind everyone I'm speaking with Sharon Kwon, co-founder of Joyous PBC and the founder of Bodhi Aware Therapy. So let's talk specifically about the work you do, who you're working with, how you're doing that work, and even before that, how did you get to this point where, all right, I want to start my own thing, my own company or whatever?
I mean, it was just all the healing that I had done, and I think, I mean, I always wanted to just work for myself. I've, you know, in my training, I've worked with a lot of people. I worked at another therapy group, Yellow Chair Collective, where we worked where they specifically served Asian American communities, and did a lot of internships with that focused on Asian populations. And so when I started, my private practice, I really wanted to kind of bridge both worlds. And that's kind of how body aware therapy happened, where, Eastern philosophy meets this Western psychology. And I really wanted to kind of bridge both worlds.
Is there a stigma towards therapy, towards seeing a therapist in the Asian community? I mean, you said there was,
Yeah,
from your
definitely.
experience.
100%. Definitely, especially among like older generations. But I do think that younger generations have come around, but it is interesting how and I think this happened a lot during COVID because there was a lot of the rise of anti-Asian hate crimes, and so our community was directly being impacted, and it was a direct trauma. It wasn't like invisible complex trauma. It was like fear and visceral fear. Like we had people, our elders being attacked, young women being attacked. So that led to, I think, a huge increase in Asian Americans seeking therapy. And oh yeah, but what I found interesting was that even still, a lot of my clients then were keeping it a secret. They weren't telling their parents about it.
About the
That
trauma
they
they
were
experienced?
that they were in therapy.
Okay.
Yeah. So the stigma was still very much there. It was just like, this is shameful, or like, my parents won't understand, and they're gonna think that I'm being ungrateful, or like they're gonna dismiss me. Like, what trauma? What mental health? Why would you have any issues? We've done so much for you.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So obviously, I'm sure there's a wide variety of people who are coming to you, but is there a theme? Is there a common denominator? Are younger people who are maybe becoming comfortable with the stigma, getting rid of the stigma? Are they coming to see you? Who are your clients?
Yeah, I would say it kind of ranges anywhere from like mid 20s to mid 40s right now for me. Women and men. And a lot of the themes among my Asian American clients have to do with family and parents and boundaries. a lot of childhood trauma, a lot of things that they feel like parents continue to dismiss and invalidate, like they will never understand. And so it's a lot of grieving. Like I feel like I spend most of my time with my clients grieving with them.
And grieving specifically, what? Lost experience, lost time, what?
Grieving the loss of the ideal parent. You know, the ideal parents that they never got and probably won't get, you know, because it's a lot of kind of accepting our parents' limitations. You know, they also grew up with their own traumas and their own hardships. And, you know, with the stigma on mental health, like, it will likely be very hard for them to ever really understand and accept the things that we experience, especially when a lot of times their trauma was way worse. It was a lot harder. And, you know, I don't want to, I don't want to turn it into like the oppression Olympics, but sometimes that's just kind of how it goes down. And so, yeah, I really focus on helping my clients grieve that so that they can come out on the other end of just accepting that, yeah, it sucks. You know, it's not perfect. But, you know, we do the best we can.
Your story, Sharon, is very powerful. This need to be who, simply be yourself. You would think it's not that hard, but it's hard for so many of us. And that just keeps coming up and coming up throughout your life. And I can imagine you sitting there with your clients, many of whom, right, they just want to be myself. But all these other, it's like these puppet hands, these puppet strings are coming, pulling them. How do you begin to work with your clients in that capacity?
Yeah, I think it's just acknowledging the grief, acknowledging all the lost experiences, and working with them to reparent and heal that inner child. You know, the little kid in them that's still there, that still wants that ideal parent to just love them unconditionally and, you know, want the best, want what they want, you know, want them to just be happy.
And that sounds easier said than done, of course, right? I mean, for a lot of us, we never get that. We've never had that. Is this, is there a whole new language that Korean Americans have to learn to even begin to sit with you?
For sure. I mean, it's this language of compassion, I think, that is so hard. I really feel like a lot of times, you know, we feel so grateful for our parents' sacrifices, but that gratitude very quickly turns into guilt. And it's very difficult, I think, for people to hold these two feelings together of like, I feel grateful for my parents, but I also feel resentful for my childhood. You know, both of these things can exist at once, and we have the capacity to hold space for both. But I think that a lot of times, you know, they come in seeing me being like, I can't feel this way. Like, I have to just be grateful. And that's when, and when you reject that resentment and, you know, letting yourself feel that anger, it stops you from being able to fully grieve and fully accept that this is where your life is. You know, this is what your relationship with your parents is like. And I think a lot of people just get stuck there.
Yeah, I mean, as you're speaking, I'm thinking to myself, you know, you had this continued drive, this propulsion to be your authentic self, and a lot of people don't, or they have it, but it just stays buried, right? Buried inside, locked away. What allowed you to continue to be drawn to that?
I think I'm stubborn. A little bit of being stubborn, and I I think the car accident, actually, it really did kind of changed my life in that I almost died. And I feel like this is my second chance in life. And I woke up from that accident feeling like somehow I was spared and I have to make this life worth it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So you were hit, thrown into
A window of a liquor store, yeah. Trapped
Jesus.
under the car.
Oh my God. Were you unconscious?
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember. I have a flash of myself in the ER screaming at them to put me under because I was in so much pain. And then I woke up in the ICU.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And you wake up. At what point were you like, okay, things have to effing change in my life? When did that happen to you?
That didn't take, I mean, I don't think that hit until a few months later. You know, I think
Okay.
at that point I was just like trying to heal and
Sure.
I was really pissed off. Like, why did this happen to me? Like, what did I do to deserve this? Which felt like a constant theme in my life anyway, like in my childhood. What did I do to deserve this? And so for then something like that to happen really set me back. And then because that was when I was like, oh, I'm free. I have all this freedom. This is great. I'm living my life. And then that happened. It was almost like am I being punished by God for this? Like, what's going on? Like, if God really exists, why did he do this to me? And now I see it, it took many years, but now I see it as like one of the best things that ever happened to me.
Wow. Sharon, you're inspiring. Really are. My God. All right. How do people learn more about you and the work you're doing? What's the best way?
You can reach out on my website at SharonKwon.com. That's KWON. And if you want to learn more about the Korean American religious immigrant experience, I have a podcast out. It's called 2 PKs in a Pod.
Love it. All right. We'll have all that linked up here at the show notes page at the traumatherapistpodcast.com. Appreciate you, Sharon. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Take care.